Hey, what's up guys? Lalone Top 10s here with another awesome Lalone Top 10s production made just for you. Great Britain is no stranger to the paranormal. Supernatural stories abound in every part of its history, and there's plenty of strangeness to be had today as well. In the 17th century, the supernatural was apparently everywhere in the British Isles. Now, a number of writers at the time, such as demonologist, whose name is Richard Richard Bovet, and philosopher Henry Moore. Man, jeez. Alright, collected contemporary accounts to prove that atheism was wrong. Nowadays, these true accounts read as ridiculous, but many of them are certainly worth remembering for their creativity and weirdness. So that's why I'm going to present you guys the 10 bizarre supernatural stories from 17th century London. Alright, and when I mean 17th century, I mean 1600s Britain. Don't confuse yourself and get it to 1700s, because that's the wrong answer. So, anyway guys, we're going to first start off with number 10, with the ghost of Dundee Porteous. Now, sometime in the late 1600s, a miller by the name of Dundee Porteous was imprisoned by Sir Alexander Jardine in his tower in Dumfriesshire in Scotland. Porteous was being held on suspicion of arson, and Jardine completely forgot about his prisoner one day when he had to make a last-minute trip to Edinburgh. By the time Jardine returned, Porteous had starved to death in his cell. Now, after Porteous was discovered dead, his ghost began to haunt the tower, running and screaming about how hungry he was, alright? Now, to stop the ghost from tormenting him and his family, Jardine called for an exorcism. Alright, the exorcism was a success, trapping Porteous' ghost in the dungeon, but the spell only worked so long as a specific Bible was kept in the tower. Over time, the Bible fell apart and was sent to Edinburgh to be rebounded. Sure enough, with the Bible gone, Porteous' ghost escaped. Now, with that saying, from the tower and attacked the Jardine family while they were sleeping in their new home. Fortunately, things went back to normal as soon as the Bible was returned to the tower. So, you always gotta trust the Bible. Number 9, the coffin of Robert Batty. Now, Robert Batty was a young Englishman who always insisted on being buried in his ancestors' vault in the Church of Earthret. On August 12, 1680, he accidentally drowned at the age of 23. Despite his earlier instructions, he was buried in the churchyard instead of the family vault. The night after his funeral, Robert appeared to his sister Mary in a dream. He was very upset that he wasn't buried in the right spot, and promised to annoy those responsible until he was put into the family vault. In the morning, Robert's coffin was found dug up outside his grave. His body was undisturbed, however, and his casket was in perfect condition. Alright, Robert's coffin was reburied. But if it somehow appeared outside its grave 2 more times. After this happened for the 3rd time now, Mary told her family about her dream. At last, Robert's corpse was moved to the family vault, where it permanently stayed. And now, it's just a whole ton of bones. Number 8, the powers of Dr. John Lambie. Now, known as the Duke's Devil, Dr. John Lambie was a seedy magician who gave magical and medical advice to George Villiers, the first Duke of Buckingham, a politician so popular that he was assassinated in the year 1628. Lamb wasn't liked much better. His political connections allowed him to escape acquittal for raping a little girl, and he was eventually killed by a mob a couple of months before Villiers was murdered. So, aside from being an overall horrible person, Lambie was also renowned for his supposedly amazing powers. In one incident, he invited 2 men named Barber and Sands to drink at his home. While talking about magic, Lamb offered to give his guests a performance. A tree suddenly materialized in the room, and 3 little men with axes were conjured up to cut it down. After the dwarves cut the tree up and carried it away, Barber secretly took a chip of wood that had fallen on his coat. Later that night, while he was in bed with his wife, all the doors and windows of his home repeatedly opened and slammed shut by themselves. Barber confessed to his wife about what he had done, and after she forced him to throw the chip outside, they were able to sleep undisturbed. Number 7. The Ghost of Dorothy Durant. In 1665, a bright 16-year-old schoolboy named Billy suddenly became depressed and withdrawn. None of his friends could tell what the matter was, but Billy confided to his brother that a ghost was troubling him. Twice a day, while walking to and from school through a field in Launceston, England, the ghost of a late neighbor named Dorothy Durant would silently follow him. Bliggs' family was skeptical and ridiculed the boy for his story. Only his headmaster, Mr. Ruddle, was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, trust me, the next morning, walking together was with his pupil in the field. Now, Mr. Ruddle was shocked to see Durant pass them by. He would see her spirit several more times afterwards. And on the morning in late July, Mr. Ruddle encountered the ghost again and attempted to talk to her. At first, the apparition struggled to speak. Her voice was hard to hear, and her words were unintelligible. But Mr. Ruddle had a conversation with her that lasted 15 minutes. On the evening, Durant's ghost met the headmaster on his way home. This was the last time she ever appeared. The exchange was only a few words, and then Durant vanished for good. So, that's the thing there. Number 6. The Meredith Children. In January 1675, all 4 of the children of a family named Meredith in Bristol, England, came down with violent fits. At first, the children complained that they felt pain in their heads and sides. Then their limbs began to convulse, and they would all simultaneously laugh or cry for an hour at a time. The children would crawl on the floor like cats, and one witness even claimed that they would sit on the ceiling and walls like spiders. One of the daughters also insisted that she could predict the future, while another one kept throwing up pins. To add to the weirdness, the fits would only happen during the day. At night, the children could sleep without any problems. None of the city's doctors could offer an explanation. The Meredith children continued to experience the fits for months, every day attended by praying ministers. In May, the fits unexplicably stopped, and the children were well again. That's a good thing. Number 5. Anne Jeffreys and her fairies. Now, one day in 1645, while working as a servant for the Pitt family in Cornwall, England, 19-year-old Anne Jeffreys claimed to see 6 fairies in her master's garden. The sight of the little people in green scared the girl so badly that she collapsed. Alright. For months, she suffered terrible fits and was so weak that she couldn't stand. After her encounter, Jeffreys developed healing powers, eventually becoming all known across England for her magical touch. She said that she was constantly accompanied by fairies, only she could see, and that the fairies gave her special fairy food. In an age when the authorities took the supernatural seriously, it was only a matter of time before Jeffreys' fame attracted the attention of the local magistrates and ministers. Since the clergyman accused the fairies of being the work of the devil, Jeffreys was put in jail for a time. She was eventually released, however, and married and lived to an old age. So, you think about it, that's how it works back then. Number 4. The Poltergeist of Isabel Harriet. Hooray. I'm going to say Hirai. I guess I'll say it like that. For several years, Isabel Harriet was a servant for a minister in Ormiston, Scotland. Harriet was a good worker, but the minister fired her because she had little interest in religion. In the winter of 1680, she fell sick and died. Shortly after her death, Harriet's ghost was seen near the minister's house. A few nights after the sighting, the minister's home was pelted with stones that came out of literally nowhere. Now, for some, or 9 weeks, these attacks continued, with some of the stones hitting the minister's servants. Aside from the stone thrown, other things in the house were mysteriously moved, and strange noises could also be heard. When the poltergeist activity finally stopped, Herod's ghost was seen for a second and final time. The witness, the same woman who saw the apparition for the first time, found Harriet collected stones in the minister's yard. Before the witness ran away out of fear, Harriet said that the devil wanted her to destroy her old master. Alright, number 3, the doppelganger of Mary Goff. Right now, on June 3rd, 1691, Mary Goff lay on her deathbed at her father's house in West Malin, England. That night, Goff begged her husband to fetch a horse. Now, her children were about 9 miles away in Rochester, and she insisted on being with them when she died. Goff was far too weak to get out of bed, though, so no horse was called for. At 1 a.m., Goff's breathing stopped. She was not dead, but she appeared to be in a trance-like state. Around the same time in Rochester, the children's nurse was surprised to see Goff come out of her older daughter's bedroom. For 15 minutes, Goff then quietly stood at the nurse's bedside, where a younger daughter slept as well. Right after the clock struck 2 a.m., Goff left the house in Rochester and came out of her trance in West Malling. Before she died that day, Goff told her mother that she visited her children in her sleep. That same morning, the nurse reported the incident to some neighbors, who later confirmed the story. Alright. So, number 2, the demon of Sprayton. Okay guys, now we're going to head on to number 2 here now, with the demon of Sprayton. I think that's how you say it. So, anyway, let's hop on the story. In November 1682, a servant named Francis Fay was met by his master's dead father in a field in Sprayton, England. The ghost asked that Fay carried out some unfinished business related to his will. The young man dully complied, and after finishing the work, he headed home the next day. While coming back into Sprayton, Fay encountered yet another ghost, his master's dead stepmother. The demon of Sprayton, as the spirit came to be known, greeted Fay by throwing him off his horse. For whatever reason, the demon was determined to make Fay's life a living hell, and a very strange one at that. Alright, so sometimes the demon would strangle Fay with his own handkerchiefs. Other times, she would rip up his wings. Excuse me, wigs, not wings. On one occasion, she flung Fay up into the air, while on another, she made his shoelaces come to life. In another bizarre episode, Fay was attacked by a bird that held a stone in its beak, which it used to try to bash the young man's head in. So, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Number 1, the ghost of Anne Walker. Now, William Walker was a rich widower who lived in Lurney, England. Actually, it's Lumley, England. Sorry about that, guys. To keep his house in order, William hired a relative named Annie to work as his housekeeper. Annie and William became very close, and when Annie became pregnant, everyone in the village had a good guess about who the father might be. In March 1632, excuse me, William decided to send Annie anyway, until the scandal calmed down. At first, William kept Annie at an aunt's house, but then he supposedly moved her to the city of Durham. 2 weeks passed without anyone hearing any news about her when she suddenly reappeared, soaked and covered in blood, to a miller in Lumley by the name of James Graham. Alright, Annie told Graham that she was dead. William had moved her to Durham. He actually hired a man named Mark Sharp to kill her. Sharp murdered Annie with a pickaxe, and then he dumped her body into a pool of water in a coal mine. Before vanishing into thin air, Annie asked that Graham tell the authorities about what happened to her. Graham was reluctant to report the murder, but he finally came around after Annie appeared again, swearing to haunt him for the rest of his life. The authorities searched the coal mine, finding Annie's corpse exactly where her ghost said it would be. Since the apparition story apparently checked out, both Sharp and Walker were arrested. Sharp immediately confessed to the murder, and he and his occupants were sent to the gallows in November of that same year. I guess that's pretty much about it. If you have any spooky stories from 16th century England that I did not cover about in this list, let me know in the comment section down below. Alright guys, that's pretty much about it. Hopefully you liked this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Lone Top 10s for more videos Monday through Saturday. On Saturday's the day where I like to make my standard, excuse me, make my standard, random facts videos. Alright, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.